The void is never silent, though mortals pretend otherwise. It hums with memory, with echoes of wars so old they predate language, with the patient stirrings of a species who once ruled the stars with a hand of living metal. Buried deep beneath dead sands and hollow moons, they wait, countless tomb complexes, stretching beneath entire continents, each vault holding not bones, but armies preserved in the cold stasis of timeless machinery. Their awakening is not a question of if, but when. And when the first cracks of emerald light spread across the galaxy, when the first monolithic doors grind open to reveal the Necrons and their undying regiments, the nightmare will not come from the unknown. It will come from the past, a past so ancient that even the Emperor's scholars cannot measure it, and it will arrive with a precision and inevitability that no crusade or muster can match. If the sound of those words chills you, if the idea of every tomb world rising in unison sets your imagination racing toward battlefields drenched in green fire, then stay with me. And if you want more stories that peel back the veil of this universe, that explore the whispered terrors and the secret histories of the 41st millennium, then lend your strength to this channel. Like, share, and subscribe, and you help keep these explorations alive, these echoes amplified across the noosphere. Now, let's descend together into the heart of the question. What truly happens when every Necron tomb world stirs, and the galaxy is forced to meet them once more? Chapter 1. The Stirring of Forgotten Worlds. Across forgotten deserts, drowned seabeds, and fractured moons, the first tremors begin. This chapter peers into the silence before the storm, where servitors record faint energy surges, where imperial outposts vanish into static, and where the soil itself begins to crack with a green glow. It is a story of the ground level, of those who first see what is stirring beneath, and it captures the suffocating tension of knowing something vast is rising that cannot be stopped. Chapter 2. The Shattering of Front Lines. Here the awakening becomes war. Regiments of the Astra Militarum find themselves crushed beneath phalanxes of living metal, while the Adeptus Astartes launch desperate counterstrikes, only to find their bolters screaming uselessly against phase-shifting bodies. Worlds fall one by one, manufactorums turn silent, skies lit by Gauss fire. This chapter is a chaos of collapse, the immediacy of survival, and the ground-level horror of those who realize the scale of what is unfolding. Chapter 3. The Silence Between Stars. As Imperial defenses begin to break, the terror is not just what the Necrons destroy, but what they reclaim. Tomb fleets rise from beneath planetary crusts and merge into disciplined armadas. Communication lines falter. The Mechanicus loses more knowledge than it ever imagined, watching entire data vaults erased in emerald beams. But beyond the material devastation lies something stranger. The terrible order the Necrons impose, a silence replacing the chaotic noise of human civilization, and the dawning realization that this is not invasion, but restoration. Chapter 4. Whispers of the Imperium. Even as the galaxy burns with physical war, there are darker rumors carried by voidfarers and echoed in the shrines of astropaths. They speak of the Necrons not merely as conquerors, but as a race whose hatred of the warp bleeds into reality itself. The Imperium recoils where their fleets gather. Demonic incursions flicker and vanish. To some, this is salvation, a chance to strangle chaos at its root. To others, it is a worse horror. For a galaxy purge of the warp may mean the extinction of psychers, of the Astronomicon, of mankind's fragile survival. Chapter 5. The Question of Eternity. The final chapter draws us beyond battles and into the implications. If every tomb world rises, then the galaxy faces not a war of empires, but the return of its true masters. Here we confront the question that lingers like a shadow over every imperial record. Can humanity endure in a galaxy that has no place for it? Or is the Imperium nothing but a brief interruption in the reign of the undying? The answers are not given outright. For in the grim darkness of the far future, certainty is as rare as mercy. Instead, the chapter closes as it began, with the sense of inevitability, of an awakening still spreading, and of a night that may last forever. Chapter 1. The Stirring of Forgotten Worlds. The first signs are always small. They whisper beneath the notice of generals and the litanies of priests, but they do not escape the soil. On the desert moon of Karast, a place marked on few charts and visited only by wandering prospectors, The dust begins to move, not with wind, for there is no atmosphere to stir it, but with a faint vibration that pulses like the heartbeat of something buried alive. The survey teams do not notice at first. Their auspex scanners register only anomalous readings, faint flickers of energy like the dying cough of an ancient reactor. A tech adept records the data on his slate, mutters a half-hearted prayer to the Omnicia, and sets aside. But the vibration does not stop. It grows, steady, deliberate, a rhythm too precise to be natural. Far across the segmentum, similar signs emerge. An Imperial listening post vanishes in the black seas of static. Vox traffic cuts short mid-sentence, replaced by a droning hum that gnaws at the sanity of the operators. In the grain vaults of forgotten agri-world, the ground swells and collapses without warning, swallowing entire silos into chasms lined with metallic walls. Survivors babble of emerald light beneath the earth, of statues that move when no one watches, of cold air that smells of dust and ozone. The administratum records the events as tectonic instability. The Mechanicus marked them unconfirmed. But across the galaxy, the same pattern repeats, spreading like a contagion. Silence, tremor, light. Those who live closest to the soil are the first to know fear. Miners speak of drills that crack against impossible alloys, tools snapping when they strike what should be stone. Children dream of skeletal figures, moving through corridors no human has ever carved. Even the animals sense it. Hive rats flee to the surface, abandoning tunnels they have ruled for generations. Plague wolves howl at empty skies. Herds stampede without cause, breaking through fences and walls as though fleeing some predator none can see. The Imperium does not listen to such omens. It has endured too long, seen too much, and buried too many worlds to pause for nightmares. But the signs spread regardless, indifferent to faith or denial. On the frontier world of Veros, the Awakening is first seen through the eyes of a single sentry. His name is forgotten, lost to records, but his fear remains. He stands his watch upon the perimeter of a half-abandoned manufactorum, where machines rust and workers toil only to meet the barest quotas. The night is cold, the air thick with smog. His auspex unit flares once, then dies. He thinks little of it. Just another fault, another relic too worn to be trusted. But then he hears it, a grinding sound beneath his boots, not like rockfall or shifting plates, but deliberate, like the teeth of vast gears turning after millennia of stillness. He presses his ear to the ground and feels it, a vibration running through the earth, steady and human. He whispers a prayer, though no words come. Moments later, the earth splits. The crack is clean, impossibly so, a line cut with surgical precision through stone and soil. Light spills from within, green and cold, casting shadows longer than the manufactorum walls. The sentry staggers back, his vox grill stuttering. He does not live long enough to report. Something rises in a fracture, not with haste, but with inevitability. A surface plate, monolithic and seamless, shifts upward on unseen mechanisms, unfolding into a stair that descends into darkness. Beyond, rows of figures wait, motionless. Not statues, not machines. Soldiers. They stand in perfect formation, weapons clutched in skeletal hands, their metal bodies marked with sigils that no human tongue can read. Their eyes flicker to life with baleful emerald glow, and the first Necron warriors take their step back into a galaxy of flesh. Across other tomb worlds, the pattern repeats. Some awaken slowly, their systems fractured by long decay, their armies stirring only in fragments. Others rise with terrifying speed, entire legions fully restored, silent phalanxes marching forth beneath the stars. In the great vaults, monolithic lords stir upon thrones of black metal, their memories bleeding back like poison. They do not dream, but they remember. They remember a galaxy that once bent before their rule, a galaxy not yet scarred by the madness of warp travel or the crude defiance of mortals. And they remember their purpose, reclamation. Still, for most of the Imperium, this is only rumor. Reports are inconsistent, garbled, contradicted. Administratum scribes cross-reference hundreds of accounts and declare them anomalies. To admit otherwise would be to admit a threat too great to contain. But on the ground, survival strips away denial. Settlements vanish overnight. Patrols return broken, whispering of weapons that flay flesh from bone in a single beam, of enemies who do not bleed, who do not speak, who do not stop. For every world that resists, dozens fall before a single regiment is fully mustered. Humanity is vast, but the stirrings beneath are vaster still. And through it all, the galaxy holds its breath. For these are not invasions in the manner of orcs or tyranids, wild and ravenous. This is not the burning crusade of chaos, a storm of madness that consumes itself as readily as its prey. No, this is order, patient, merciless order, unfolding according to design written in the bones of planets themselves. The Necrons do not rush. They do not falter. They awaken, one vault at a time, one phalanx at a time, and in that precision lies the most terrifying truth. The galaxy does not face an attack. It faces inevitability. The stirrings spread outward, from dust moons to hive cores, from drowned seas to dead suns. In the void, ships of unknown make rise from planetary crusts and unfold like insects shaking off their wings. The green light of their engines ignites across the night, a silent constellation spreading wider with each passing day. Somewhere in the dark, a cry goes out, half prayer, half warning, that the dead have risen, but it is already too late. The Imperium notices in fragments. A distress call here, a vanishing colony there, each one small enough to be dismissed as a local tragedy in a galaxy that bleeds daily. Yet patterns begin to surface. And though the administratum drowns in its own bureaucracy, the Mechanicus feels a shudder of something deeper. On Mars itself, adepts pore over data slate transmissions, their mechadendrites twitching as they parse anomalies that defy their catalogs. A low-ranking engineer in the Carpathian Forge cluster isolates a signal embedded in the static, a rhythmic sequence pulsing in exact repetition across multiple sectors. He dares suggest it may be communication. His superior dismisses it as faulty calibration. The engineer persists. Within days, he vanishes in the records, scrubbed as though he never existed. In the field, the first true confrontations are not battles, but massacres. On the frontier agri-world of Telesur, the Astra Militarum maintains a garrison of 3,000 troops, hardened men and women, accustomed to orc raids and the ever-present shadow of chaos cults. They are drilled and disciplined. When the tremors begin, their commanders react swiftly, deploying scouts to investigate. The scouts never return. A company is dispatched, armored transports roaring across fields once fertile with grain. Hours later, only fragments of their vehicles remain, their hulls neatly sliced, their interiors scoured to ash. The Vox relay captures a final burst of static and a scream that cuts off not in chaos, but in silence, as though smothered. By the time the Necron phalanxes emerge in full, the garrison is already broken. They come in lines too straight to be natural, each step identical to the last, their weapons humming with restrained power. The guardsmen open fire, lost guns blazing, heavy bolters spitting incandescent shells. For a heartbeat, the night is filled with courage, with a defiance of humanity standing against the unknown. Then the green fire answers. Gauss beams slice through armor as though it were parchment, tearing flesh molecule by molecule until nothing remains but dust drifting on the wind. Whole squads vanish in a heartbeat, reduced to memories. Vehicles ignite from within as their crews are stripped away, leaving only empty shells smoldering on the fields. And yet the Necrons do not surge forward. They advance with patience, with certainty, as though they have all the time in eternity. Their movements are not the frenzied charges of orcs, nor the ravenous floods of tyranids. They are measured, deliberate, and it is this cold inevitability that shatters morale faster than any beam of green fire. Guardsmen flee not because they are cowards, but because they realize in their marrow that no weight of numbers can slow this tide. The Imperium has faced extinction before, but never with such silence. Above Telesur, the planetary governor orders the astropaths to send a call for aid. The effort costs their minds. The Necron presence radiates not just through matter, but into the immaterium itself. The warp recoils, flickers, distorts. The message is garbled, shredded into fragments by interference no adept can explain. Somewhere, across light years, the desperate plea may reach a listening ear, but what will be heard? A scream, a warning, or nothing at all. For those on the ground, there is no waiting for reinforcements. The manufactorum quarter collapses into the earth, swallowed by a void lined with metallic walls and glowing veins of energy. Entire regiments vanish in seconds. The survivors run into the forest, into the mountains, into the dark, chased not by hunting packs, but by the implacable advance of machines that do not need to rest. They are not hunted, not harried, but erased. Cities vanish into light. Fields become wasteland. And then, without fanfare, the Necrons stop. The world falls silent. The green glow seeps into the sky, casting every shadow long, as though the planet itself now belongs to something else. On other worlds, echoes of Telesur repeat. Outposts in the Gothic sector fall quiet. Mines in the eastern fringe collapse into glowing abysses. Explorator fleets return not with relics, but with empty husks, their crews hollow-eyed, speaking only of the endless ranks of steel that stir beneath their feet. And still, the High Lords of Terra dismiss the reports. 1,000 crises burn at once, and the Necrons are not yet named among them. To acknowledge them will be to spread panic, to admit that humanity faces an enemy that cannot be reasoned with, cannot be corrupted, cannot be swayed. So the warnings die in bureaucracy, even as the awakening spread. But whispers persist among the Scutarii. Soldiers tell one another of fighting foes who rise again no matter how many times they are felled. Among rogue traders, rumors spread of ships unlike any known design, their prows shaped like the skulls of titans, their beams flaying void craft in a single stroke. Among pilgrims, the superstitions take on a spiritual edge. Tales of gods who walk once more, gods who rule before mankind was born. These stories carry on the breath of survivors, the rare few who escape extermination. They are disregarded as exaggeration, as the ravings of those broken by battle. But the pattern grows undeniable. What is stirring beneath the galaxy is not chaos, but something colder. Not a hunger, but a reclamation. And as the tombs crack open across 1,000 forgotten worlds, humanity begins to learn a terrible truth. The dead do not rise with rage. They rise with purpose. The cracks widen. What began as scattered anomalies now forms a constellation of awakenings across the stars, each one more difficult to ignore than the last. In the Agrippina sector, entire manufacturing cities vanish beneath sudden sinkholes, their plasma reactors devoured by machinery that had lain dormant for millions of years. In the Ultima Segmentum, pilgrim fleets drift through void lanes only to encounter monolithic structures where none had been charted before, black obelisks that hover silently, inscriptions burning with emerald light. Astropaths aboard those vessels die screaming, their minds collapsing under waves of silence that flood the warp, a silence so profound it is mistaken for the voice of death itself. Survivors stagger back into real space, bearing wounds not of the body, but the soul, their eyes glassy, their words broken. For a time, the Imperium clings to denial. Administratum clerks insist that reports are exaggerated, that isolated systems fall every year, lost to pirates, orcs, or simply the entropy of neglect. The galaxy is vast, and a few vanishing colonies do not constitute proof of some greater threat. But those who live nearest to the stirrings know better. Refugees pour into neighboring systems, their ships overcrowded, their stories fevered. They tell of armies rising from the earth with unerring discipline, of weapons that erase flesh in a single beam, of rulers clad in living metal who speak with voices like grinding stone. They speak of worlds not merely conquered, but overwritten, their skies replaced by alien constellations, their soil pulsing with mechanical veins. The tales reach the ears of the Astra Militarum, and for the first time, regiments are dispatched in full strength. Entire battle groups mobilize, their banners proud, their tanks rumbling, their faith in the Emperor unshaken. They descend upon threatened worlds expecting resistance they can crush, enemies they can outlast by sheer numbers. But the wars they meet are not wars at all. They are executions. On the world of Morentis, the 82nd Vostroyan Regiment deploys with pomp and ceremony. They march into position, lines immaculate, their lost guns raised in perfect unison. The Necrons meet them without hesitation. The opening volley is pure human willpower, thousands of shots lancing into metallic ranks. Emerald sparks fly as beams of light pierce living metal, some warriors collapsing into fragments of alloy. Cheers rise among the guardsmen. Then the fallen stir. Pieces crawl back together. Torsos right themselves. Heads reattach with sparks of green energy, and the ranks reform as though nothing had been lost. The return volley is devastating. Rows of guardsmen vanish in clouds of ash. Tanks split open as though sliced by invisible blades. Commanders fall, their orders dissolving into chaos. Within hours, the regiment is gone, reduced to scattered survivors fleeing through forests they're themselves reshaping, the roots parting to reveal mechanical corridors descending into the earth. News of such defeat spreads slowly, throttled by censors and buried in bureaucracy, but it cannot be hidden forever. Rogue traders whisper of sectors where entire star charts have grown unreliable, where old void routes now pass through zones patrolled by silent fleets of blackened steel. The Mechanicus debates in secret, forbidden conclaves where even to speak of certain symbols is deemed heresy. They recognize fragments of technology older than their cult, older than Mars itself, yet they cannot admit this knowledge openly. To do so would mean acknowledging that their machine god is not alone, that there are powers of steel and silence whose mastery eclipses their own. Among ordinary citizens of the Imperium, the stories take root like weeds. In taverns and underhive dens, drunks mutter of skeletal giants walking in the night. In shrines, pilgrims whisper prayers against a green fire, hoping the Emperor's light is enough to shield them. Children draw images of warriors with hollow eyes, though none can say how they know their shapes. Fear spreads faster than the truth, and in that fear, the sense of inevitability grows. For once, it is not chaos that haunts their dreams, nor orcs, nor tyrannids. It is silence. Silence beneath the soil, silence in the stars, silence that grows louder each night. And somewhere across the endless sprawl of the Imperium, there comes a moment when even denial can no longer hold. Reports align, patterns emerge, and the name is spoken aloud in the halls of power. Necrons. Not myth, not rumor, not fragments of the distant past, but an enemy whose patience has finally ended. The realization spreads like wildfire through the corridors of command, though it reaches the common soldier only in fragments. To most, it is already too late. The stirrings beneath have become awakenings, and the awakenings have become wars. For the Imperium, the horror is not just a scaled threat, but the sense of time itself unraveling. Humanity has always fought to build a future. The Necrons do not fight for the future. They fight to reclaim the past. And against that, what hope can any mortal hold? Thus ends the first wave. The galaxy trembles not under invasion, but under remembrance. The forgotten are no longer forgotten, and their silence is a promise that the worst is yet to come.